how many laws have I broken here? What is my bill of school fees from this very, very straightforward and kind of common task I believe is happening today?
So I was trying to count as you were going along, because as you were talking, I was like, whew, there it is again.
Yeah.
Then now you've put it into AI. We need consent in order to have automated decision-making around your data. What I think you've done at least 6 violations there.
Yeah.
What's the price of that? Probably $1 million.
Hectic. So you're probably looking at a click and drag, a little prompt, send, and then you're making coffee, and that's bang, R1 million fine that you've now put onto yourself or onto the company.
And what we're going to hear is they're going to say, oh, but it wasn't me. It was the AI.
You can break the law before lunch with a copy-paste, a pixel, or an audience you never actually built, and never know you did. Today's school fees go up to 10 million Rand, and you're about to get a lesson for free. This is school fees. Every lesson in business has a price. Some people pay it in money, some people pay it in sleep, some people pay it in time. It's our very first episode, so thank you, Sam, for joining us on our very first one. I think it's going to be a very interesting show. The goal with it is we're going to find out what different school fees people have paid already, so other people don't have to on their journeys when starting up a company and going into this event. So yeah, let's dive in. I'm James Bradnick, and this is School Fees. Today, our guest is Samantha Walker, commercial executive at LabourNet. You built the information compliance product and the commercial department from scratch. How did it come about? Like, at what point did you say businesses need this as a product and decide to kind of tackle it head on?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me on the show. And as your first guest, I'm very honored.
Of course.
I think it's a very relevant topic, AI and data protection. And really where my journey started was I started doing workshops to train businesses on POPI, because I could see this new act was coming and no one was really ready for it. So I was actually training people and doing POPI compliance before the act even came fully into force. And really where it came from is I realized that data protection was actually a business differentiator, not just a burden. And I thought, this is what the SMEs need, assistance within the market. And to date, we've assisted over 2,000 SMEs with their compliance. Yeah, thank you.
That's amazing.
To really help them grow their businesses and create that trust from their customers.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's very cool. So you've spent your career marking other people's exams, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of people pay school fees and make these mistakes. And I'm very excited to dive into the details of it. I've got a few topics from my side, owning a marketing agency where our whole entire goal is to target people, and how do we do it within certain parameters. So I'm very keen to dive into it. Now, you're an admitted attorney, and what's that transition like, going from admitted attorney into the commercial exec space and in the commercial space?
It was quite a transition. I think previously I was a litigator, and litigators are pushing hard deadlines. We're always very stressed, and litigation is a very long-term game. And I think the one thing I could bring from my litigation into my commercial executive role is that sort of long-term forward-looking. You know, the courts take a while, documents take a while. So I really knew that we had to play the long game here. But I think most importantly, the change was really about people and how we interact with people, and really the awareness.
Yeah, I think that's very, very cool. And I'm very excited to see where you take this. And you know, you've been doing a lot of public speaking and stuff like that to really spread awareness, and it's not easy. It's not easy. A lot of traveling and speaking to a lot of people. So tell us a bit about the latest stuff that you've done, like events and talks that you've done. What have you recently been working on?
Awesome. So I think my most recent talk was with the Deputy Information Officer of CIPC, Lucinda Steenkamp. We had an incredible webinar with her, as well as Brittany Veerseman, one of my colleagues that work for me. And we really had a discussion around POPI as well as POPIA, the Promotion of Access to Information Act, and why visibility of compliance is now public, because from the CIPC's point, they've really partnered with the information regulator that your compliance is visible to anyone who logs on and checks your CIPC registration, which is often banks, investors, things like this. Previous to that, at the moment, the topic I'm getting booked for the most is my keynote talk on your AI doesn't know it's breaking the law.
Very cool.
Which I've been in Eastern Cape, KZN, and Cape Town recently.
Very cool. And people can find this online as well.
Yes, they can find me on LinkedIn, and my talks are there. I do write a lot of articles as well on what's happening in the industry, and I really try make it practical for an SMME. So obviously this can get quite complicated in terms of the legislation, but I try really break it down and give you practical advice, sort of what 5 things can you do today.
Sure.
To walk away with, because I think education and awareness, as you said, is going to be the game changer.
Yeah. And we're definitely going to be pulling out 5 or 4 or 6 tips that our audience can take from
Absolutely.
this. So stay tuned, and we'll definitely give you some stuff to work with. So today's school fees can go up to 10 million rand in fines, and in really serious cases up to 10 years of imprisonment. Now, we're talking about organizations. So I completely understand an organization can get fined up to 10 million rand, but who gets arrested? Who gets imprisoned?
So with the imprisonment under POPI, so first and foremost, I do want to tell you that this is not new crimes we've really created underneath data protection that's really particular to data protection, but it's more around how you interact with the information regulator. So, for example, if you're going to falsify evidence or bury evidence, it's going to lead to criminal imprisonment.
Sure.
And that was always in the space in any event. The one new thing, though, is really information officers stand responsible for compliance within their organizations. And if they step out of line, they can get into trouble.
Okay, cool. So now if a company doesn't register an information officer, who gets in trouble then?
Then your organization is going to get a fine. So we've just seen 3 enforcement notices recently come out, and the one was for TVET College. And pretty much what was said there is they had frameworks in place, but they didn't register an information officer. They said that is your gate to compliance. So nothing else mattered. So they've now been given 30 days to correct their registration, make sure everyone is trained, etc.
And the head of the organization would kind of default that, right?
Default to the head of the organization. So depending on how you structure it, it's going to be your MD or CEO.
Gotcha.
We all know that top pinnacle person that we've got to be nice to pay our salaries. That's exactly who is going to be responsible. And what we've seen is people try avoid registration so that they don't get in trouble or don't attract liability. And you're just going to now attract double liability, because it's going to be for the POPI violation as well as for non-registration.
Of course, yeah. In one breath now, with POPI and PIA and CPA, who's it actually for? Like, who does it apply to?
Absolutely every organization and person processing personal information. So I think some of the misconceptions we see in the industry is, I only have 2-3 employees, so it doesn't apply to me. My turnover is low. My favorite one is when clients tell me I'm not actually processing any personal information, but then they've got the employee's details and the employee bank details. So
sure.
It does apply to everyone. And really, POPI has a really broad scope. Pretty much if you're processing personal information in South Africa, it's going to apply to you.
Okay.
So personal information is anything from name, contact number, the usual things we think of, as well as like my biometric information, and my personal opinion is also my personal information.
Sure.
So there isn't really an exemption to get away from POPI. Everybody must be POPI compliant.
Insane. Okay, cool. What, in your experience, what are the most common POPI mistakes that SMEs or agencies are currently making, and like what are they in for? What is the school fee attached to these very easy to make mistakes?
As I just mentioned, the first one is definitely this doesn't apply to me. I've been in webinars where my webinars, I'll normally do about a 45-minute presentation and 15-minute Q&A, where my Q&A is run into an hour and 20 minutes, and the individual is still asking me, so how do I get compliant? So I think the biggest mistake is not taking the first steps of registering your information officer. And then I really think not getting your staff involved is your employees are going to be either your greatest asset or your greatest weakness.
Sure.
They are the front line of who's dealing with personal information. So my goal of my product when we come into a company is to really create a culture of privacy. And once we have that culture, it becomes a lot easier. So definitely the registration and leaving out of staff. It doesn't help that your top 3 individuals in the organization know everything about POPI, but the person who's actually processing payroll doesn't, because that's who definitely needs it. So
Okay.
training.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's very, very cool. I think training has always been the forefront of what we've tried to achieve here at Poetry is, giving everyone the information and giving them the understanding of what the consequences are for that. And training. How do you guys go about training? Do you guys offer training within LabourNet? How does that work?
Yes, so we actually have an entire training division. We have some academies, and we provide all sorts of different compliance trainings, because LabourNet is not just my product, but health and safety and transformation, new skills development. But for us, we actually include training in our product. It was a decision I made a long time ago. I was told by someone, he said to me, you can make a lot more money if you put training on the side. And I said, but I can make a lot more impact if I include it in the product.
Yeah, sure.
And that was really what we wanted to do as a business, is to have this impact and educate. Because I do believe we need to get to sort of herd immunity under COVID. Once we've all reached a certain level of compliance, it becomes easier, because now when I ask you to sign a consent form, you know why you're signing it.
Yes.
It doesn't become a back and forth between the lawyers, I think. And it can easily fall in that trap where I'm fighting with another attorney over wording. And I think then we've missed the point of what data protection actually was really brought into play for.
Yeah, and I've gone through the Act, and I've applied a lot of compliance within Urban Poetry. We take it very seriously. And if I'm very honest with you, it's really not that complicated. It seems very overwhelming at first, but once you guys get into the swing of things, and you get the policies and you get the training, and you kind of build that culture around being compliant, it's really quite straightforward. It's most of the time, if you get into a bit of a difficult decision, it seems fairly logical to
Exactly.
The right decision's pretty logical. Now, I'm going to give you a bit of a scenario that I'm pretty sure a few people in the audience have potentially done. And this brings us back to our intro to this video, which is you could break the law before lunch. So I'm a business owner, or even an employee in a company, and I've been tasked to check in with some old leads. Maybe there's some low-hanging fruit there that we can dabble around with. I take the database that I've got that's messy, it's maybe pulled from multiple sources, and I dump all of that into Claude and ask it, or ChatGPT, and ask it, please can you clean up this data? This is what I want to do with it. And, just give me a nice clean output. I then leave and go make some coffee. By the time I'm done, it's done. There's my very easy to work with, fantastic looking spreadsheet and database that I can upload into Meta to retarget like a lookalike audience or anything along those lines. How many laws have I broken here? What is my bill of school fees from this very, very straightforward and kind of common task I believe is happening today?
So I was trying to count as you were going along, because as you were talking, I was like, whew, there it is again.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, you said it's probably put together from multiple sources. So my first thing is, have we collected from an allowed source? So either directly from the data subject or from like a public record. So either that, do you have consent to still be holding on to the information?
Sure.
How old's your database? Do you have then consent to further process the information? So you obviously collected the information for X purpose. Now we're going to do something different with it. What the law says is, if those purposes are similar, you may be allowed to, but in this instance, it's most likely not going to be similar. So now we've breached collection, purpose specification, as well as further processing. Then now you've put it into AI. We need consent in order to have automated decision making around your data. That's another point. And then I think the biggest issue for me is it triggers a cross-border transfer.
Sure.
All these AIs that we are utilizing, they're not homegrown. They don't have servers within our backyards. And that's the biggest issue. With POPI, if you send information across a border, you've got to make sure that it has the same level of protection it would have in this country. So either we do that by looking at if the country's got good laws, like in Europe, they've got the GDPR, but most of these companies are going to either be utilizing servers in Europe or in America. The California Act is really good. New York also has some great stuff, but it's not consistent across the states.
Sure.
And that's really the issue that we have is now we need to make sure it's got that level of protection, but also did you get consent from the individual to send it to a server in America? What I think you've done at least 6 violations there.
Yeah.
What's the price of that? Probably $1 million.
Hectic.
We've seen fines for $250 for really simple things and $5 million for ignoring the information regulator and not participating.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to pin it to a definitive number, but I think you can easily say to yourself, $1 million.
Yeah.
It's what it's going to cost you.
And I think if you've got like a big database and you do this, you're probably looking at a click and drag, a little prompt, send, and then you're making coffee, and that's bang, $1 million fine that you've now put onto yourself or onto the company.
And what we're going to hear is they're going to say, oh, but it wasn't me, it was the AI.
Yeah.
But you prompted the AI. The machine didn't act by itself.
Yeah.
So the individual who utilized that tool is going to be the one who's accountable for this action.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's really crazy. Okay, cool. So we've broken a few rules here. We've got R1 million on our shoulders quite quickly. Is there a way around this? Like, can a company become POPI compliant on their own?
Yes, definitely. So I think there's enough resources out there. The information regulator has so many guidance notes and things like that. My one cautionary tale would be you must keep up with the compliance. This is an evolving game in data protection. We are seeing more and more guidance notes come out. We've just had the Code of Conduct for Medical in April. We are now waiting for the Code of Conduct for Gated Communities, which is going to affect all your estates and office parks. So I think you can do it by yourself. However, someone must be watching the changes that are coming. And that's often what, when people ask me, Sam, do we need to sign up with you? I say, no, you can do this yourself. But do you have the time to take away from running your business in order to do this? And that's really why we exist.
Sure.
And you can even utilize AI ethically and lawfully. In our previous example, most of us use financial systems or something like that. Use the client's financial code. Don't put all their personal information in there. We often, currently I have over 1,500 retainer clients. To try and analyze and look at trends, thank you, it's huge amounts of volume. And so what we do is we just strip out the personal information, use the FIN code and upload it into our AIs. We must just make sure that we're not utilizing free AIs or even paid versions that has trained the model on.
Sure. Okay, so free models are utilized, they're collecting your data and training the systems.
Correct. So my mom always said when I was growing up, there's no such thing as a free lunch where you're paying for it somewhere, and that's you're paying for it in the information you give it.
Gotcha.
The NLM is there to pick up the next word. Those connections you are actually giving the machine. So if you are going to utilize that with FIN codes, then you don't and also give the same AI model the connection between the FIN code equals this client, because they can then just connect the dots.
Push it together. Okay. It's very interesting. What are 5 things you would tell someone who's like, they've got their business, they've got Claude, they've got ChatGPT. What are 5 things they should not put into these AI systems?
Definitely not highly sensitive personal information such as ID numbers or banking details. Things like this should definitely be avoided, because that sort of information is not very necessary for the task at hand often. If I'm let's say I'm drafting legal letters, I don't need to put someone's ID number into my AI for it to do that. I can just put that in afterwards.
Sure.
So definitely super sensitive information. And then as well as any IP, your intellectual property that you want to keep yours, do not put that in there. We were recently consulting with a company a couple of months ago, and they developed an internal bot. So like a compliance bot that would tell you how to take leave, how do I take leave? Where's my sales commission? These sort of things. And the idea was so that HR wouldn't be so overwhelmed and that we could scale down HR. And what happened is the CEO then took the company's financials and put it into this model, asked it to summarize it and prep him for the board meeting. What this did, there was no guardrails up. So that model took that information. Yes, it was in a closed environment. However, it took that information and stored it, that these are our financials. A couple of weeks later, an employee asked to take leave. And the bot actually came back and said, I don't think it's a good idea if you take leave at the moment. The company's not doing that well.
Hectic.
And what had happened there is, yes, it didn't go out into public because it was contained. However, the model took information it wasn't meant to have, being the company's financials, and they were going through a bit of a rough time. And that caused chaos. I'm sure you can imagine in the organization, there's a lot of questions from employees and things like that.
Insane. Coming back to what we do as Urban Poetry and marketing, obviously we dabble around with a lot of personal information. Our whole job is to target the correct person. In order to target the correct person, we need to know who that person is. Now, we don't know this information personally. Like, I can't tell you what your interests are and what your behaviors are, but Meta does have this. Last year, they rolled out what they're calling Andromeda. It's their new system. And what they did was they flipped the script. They instead of basically saying, who do we want as an agency? Who do we want to see this ad? We kind of specify certain interests that these people would have, certain behaviors, what they're kind of liking on Instagram, Facebook, and what they're sharing, and it would then target those people. Now, the issue with that was there's a massive amount of people that we were not able to target with that because we weren't broad enough with our explanations, or it was sometimes too broad and targeting way out of that scope. So Andromeda flipped the scripts on that and changed the question to who does this ad need to be seen by, and changed it to who should see this ad. Meaning that instead of giving us all the control over who we want to target, they let AI do it. And how it does it is it actually analyzes your creative, it analyzes your wording, your descriptions, your transcripts from your videos, and it figures out who does this belong to. It's called Advantage Plus, and it's through the Andromeda engine. Now, this is collecting a lot of information on individuals, and it's basically targeting them automatically. Another aspect to this is a Meta Pixel, which is installed onto a website. It's very much the same as a cookie. And for those listening who don't know what a cookie is on a website, it's a small little data chunk that will save your activity of what you've done on the website, and it saves it either onto your computer, which I think is fine. It's your own personal information onto your computer. But a lot of companies are storing this and actually selling this information and utilizing this information for meta targeting. Now, a pixel is very much the same thing. If you go from Facebook and you click on a link, go onto the website, that information gets tracked. What you do on that website gets tracked back into Pixel, and then it will classify you into a group. Now, once it's got that information, it'll then find people who are similar to you and your behaviors and group you guys together, and it will then target you automatically. Have we broken the law here?
No, I think this was actually really Meta responding to the global pressure of data protection. I know even in South Africa, the information regulator and Meta went up against each other in court, but it was an out-of-court settlement where WhatsApp had to update their privacy policies, and they're really taking this pressure from a number of countries. So they had to come up with a way to allow marketing agencies to target without giving them the target.
Sure.
And I think the way it's been set up is really, really smart, because I'm on Facebook. I've already given Facebook all my consents. I was the one who liked certain things. So let's say you're marketing for a car agency. You're really going to want to find petrol heads who's on all the sites.
Yeah.
So it's not targeting James Bradnick, the petrol head.
Yeah.
It's targeting a person between 25 and 30 who is a petrol head.
Yeah.
no personal information is actually shared here, and you've given Meta as the user consent to actually track those interests. So it's a really brilliant way of allowing us to target the right kinds of people.
Sure.
I think the panic is I've always said that the marketing agencies, data protection guys absolutely love you, because we know how much personal information flows through your organizations, and you guys are big tickets for us
Yes,
in terms of how much work we need to do.
Yeah.
I don't think you guys feel the same about us, though, because often it's seen as we're trying to stop progress or innovation or sales. And it's not. We just need to do things ethically and lawfully.
Yeah.
And Meta's given us a great platform to be able to continue to grow our businesses. That's relative as well as compliant.
Sure. Now, I've gone on to a lot of websites, and you get little pop-ups saying, can we collect a cookie, or would you allow cookies on your website? Some of them, as you mentioned earlier, before we went into studio, was a lot of these places actually give you the ability to choose what you want them to, like a menu of stuff. Now, I've never personally seen it, but an audit was done in 2026, and they found that less than 20% of websites within South Africa ask for consent for a pixel to be tracked. Now, is that an issue? Should we be implementing these pixel little clauses on our sites as well?
Definitely. So I think, obviously, in instance, if we're going to use someone's information, we need to ask their permission to, can I collect your information?
Sure.
Okay. What the different preferences is about is it really speaks to the transparency of it. And I think a good rule of thumb is I'm allowed to choose where I want my personal information to go. It is mine. I own it. And here you are going to start tracking things about me. I can then say, yes, I want this tracked, not that. So that's really where the different preferences come in. But you must ask consent in order for this to happen. Yes.
Yeah. I think I remember you always telling me whenever I had a question that I sent through to you, it's like, should I be getting consent here? It's like, if you don't know, just get it. Just rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Absolutely. And I think really data protection for me is a differentiator. So if you want to grow your business in today's day and age, in this digital world, you're going to need trust.
Yeah.
Okay. And you can lose trust like this. Imagine, for example, I have 1,500 clients, okay, that I'm servicing. They found out that I've been selling data out of the back door. I would lose all of my clients. There would be no trust. It would be huge reputational damage. And I think that's often the thing SMMEs don't see, is they worry about that fine, okay? But R1 million fine, yes, it's a big fine. A lot of SMMEs are going to take a huge knock with that. But in most instances, you guys can work through it. It can be a loan, you know, something can happen to get the fine, to lessen the impact of the fine, let's say. But once you've lost trust and reputation, we know how difficult that is to gain back. No one goes back to a cheating ex without knowing they're a cheating ex, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if let's say, for example, one of our audience members, we're really going to pick on them today, have a website, they don't have this banner, they don't have the consent tracking systems in place, but they're collecting cookies, they're collecting metapixels. What is the bill on this? What is our school fee on this very small little quick oversight?
Probably this one we're looking at about, let's say, 400 to 600. I think it's definitely an issue. The reason I've priced it lower than the previous ones is because it's really dependent on what kind of personal information this is tracking. If, for example, you utilize BizPortal with CIPC or the information regulator, I need to log in with my ID number there.
Yeah.
That my ID number is going to be in that cookie. So if there's no consent for that sort of thing, it's going to be a lot higher than you necessarily collecting maybe my IP, which is a little less damaging than my ID or my banking details.
Yeah, sure. And that's classified as personal information and special personal information, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So it does have a higher level of protection than your normal, ordinary personal information.
Sure. Now, let's say, for example, you're a small business. You've got 400 or 500 clients, and you've got a bit of a database on all of this. You can, on Meta, create what's called a lookalike audience. So you create an audience, you upload that database, which hopefully you haven't cleaned up and orientated through Claude. and formatted correctly, then you upload that database into Meta and you tell them you want people that are 1% the same as these people on this list. Now that database has a lot of information on it, and we don't do this as an agency because ethically I just feel it's wrong. But I've seen a lot of agencies do this, right? And the question is always, where did you get the database? How did you acquire that database? The second thing is, are we allowed to do this? Because yes, we are using personal information to feed into Meta, but then we're not targeting those specific people per se. We're targeting 1% of people that are similar to that.
So no, let me first put a hard statement out there. If you are buying or selling data, you've missed the plot. POPI, as well as the Consumer Protection Act, has come hard against this.
Sure.
And if you bought data, I actually did have a client once at the beginning of our POPI journey. I got called into a meeting by a consultant, and this client said, yeah, well, we buy data and we're not going to stop. I cancelled the client in that same meeting because we were never going to align, because that immediately is a massive red flag. But the second thing is, yes, you may not be targeting me, but I didn't allow you to put my information into Meta. Not everyone trusts Meta. Facebook is often seen as an evil giant.
Yeah.
And people must know where you're putting their information.
Sure.
Because maybe I'm not on Facebook. Now you've just given Meta access to a whole bunch of my information, which they didn't have before. Yeah. And I think with the new AIs and what Meta's put out there, there's a way to do this without giving personal information. I think in actual fact, giving a database of my name and my cell phone number is the worst thing you could give it. What is it going to know about me? Rather, we want people who, if you said in 1% of that, petrol heads, guys that attend events, or there's similar characteristics you can look for that doesn't have personal information involved.
Got you. So back to de-identifying
information completely, yes.
Okay, cool. So I've got a little challenge here for you, right? So it's an ordinary day, an ordinary agency, and I'm going to give you 6 actions that may not have felt illegal for them. Can you give me the cheapest fix or potential kind of violation of what they've done? So pasting leads into ChatGPT to clean it up.
No. Remove the personal information, utilize a FIN code or an identifier. You can even number them on a spreadsheet 1 to 20. So do not give AR personal information. If you are going to be giving AR personal information, you need consent for it from the individuals information you're going to use. And then you need to make sure that AR is very well set up, that your data is not going out.
Sure.
Because even the paid models now are coming with the trained model on, switched on. So you do need to actually go into your settings. It's not really a plug and play.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, our Metapixel's been firing all morning with no consent gate.
Massive issue. So exactly like your cookies, you need to have a pop-up on the website that says, hi, can we track information about you? Here's what we track, in a customizable thing. Because the issue as well is not just the collection of information, but you actually have to inform me what you're going to do with my information, where it's going, how long you're keeping it. There's a whole notification
you're sharing with it
that you're not doing either.
Got you. Now I've got a Pixel, so I've broken the first 2 rules already.
Or maybe you got it with consent.
Yeah. Let's be positive. And I've built a lookalike audience off of it. So telling Facebook, target people that are similar to this.
Absolutely fine, as long as you didn't insert personal information in the beginning to get that. So again, we use characteristics, things like that.
And that your audience, that database that you collected is good. Last year, let's say we're not in a business like ours where we've got contracts in place or recurring revenue from our clients, and it's once-off buys. Let's take last year's customer list and upload it into a custom audience.
So no, again, it's personal information that you're putting into a new machine, but also the database degrades. So you may actually be doing yourself a disservice because half of that information may have changed by now and we don't know.
Got you. I buy a B2B list to cold email.
No. This is the absolute worst thing you can do. I think if the information regulator must catch someone buying and selling data, I think we may see
Even if it's B2B? No.
Even if it's B2B. So I think that's actually a really good point, is a lot of people think POPI just protects a natural person like you and me, but it doesn't. It protects our companies as well.
Okay.
Which is very different to the GDPR, which they don't protect touristic entities. So often people think, oh, well, I'm GDPR compliant, I'm POPI compliant. You're not. There's another layer of protection for businesses.
Okay, that's very interesting. I send a newsletter out with 400 email addresses in CC, not BCC.
Okay, well, firstly, did you have consent to direct market to these individuals? Because a newsletter, even asking for a donation, is seen as direct marketing. So we've worked with a lot of NPCs in the animal space, in the children's space. Whenever they ask for donations, they actually have to comply with the direct marketing provision. So that would be the first instance, is whether you complied with that. And the second issue that you'd have with that is you've just actually had a data breach. You've just shared everyone's email addresses with absolutely everyone. I see this a lot in complexes. Body corporates do it absolutely all the time, and they think they're immune to these laws because they're not a commercial entity as necessarily. Everybody processing, whether you make money off of it or not, has to be compliant.
Okay, that's I think this happens more often than we'd like to admit. What's the school fee on that small mistake?
Again, I think probably looking at about 750 to over $1 million, depending on how bad, how many email addresses was contained therein. You know, what was the impact? If there was four people in that mail, it would be one thing. But if you were one of these complexes that have over 100 units in, that could be absolutely massive.
Yeah, insane. Now, let's say a company is POPI compliant, or they have their POPI policies in place. What would an AI policy look like for them? What's the minimum that can keep you out of the classroom? In this situation.
And it's actually a lot simpler than most people think. So when I consult on implementing AI in a business, there's a number of things that I put into play. Firstly, is there must always be a human in the loop. We cannot allow a machine just to run away. This is not iRobot. We need to have a human in the room that's going to take accountability. So whatever I put in the machine, I stand accountable for.
Okay, cool.
The second thing is, I think, relatively easy is awareness training, but it's really going to hinge on the third aspect, which you get this thing called an information classification policy, which tells you this is public information in our company, you know, the media, the marketing, this is confidential, this is restricted, so it means it will go nowhere ever. And we actually classify information at different levels. The reason we do this is it allows the employees to know what can I share, what can't I share. If it's in the public box, go wild. If it's in restricted, probably most employees shouldn't even have access to it.
Sure.
And what I suggest is that we extend that policy. If you don't have one in place, put a baby one in place and put what is no prompt information. Never will enter a machine ever. Okay? What information is internal prompt? So we can only utilize in an AI that's set up in our environment that's shut down.
So like an offline AI.
Absolutely. If you're running an offline AI, there's certain bots you can set up with Copilot that restricts, you know, how things go outside, and then what you are freely allowed to prompt. Okay. So I think the biggest thing with AI is, I also do this talk called Shadow AI, and it's really where employees utilize AI that's outside of the approved stack.
Sure.
The saddest thing for me is these employees aren't doing it to try to be malicious. They're doing it to do better work for us as business owners.
Yeah.
To complete the huge amount of tasks or the crazy sales targets we've given them, and they found a tool to help them do it. So rather empower your people so they know exactly when and what can and can't go in there, and then that obviously links in with your training.
Sure.
So definitely keep a human in the loop, awareness train, and then update that information classification policy. And something I really suggest is do not ban all AIs. I know that's going to sound absolutely wild, but what we're seeing is if an organization completely bans AI, let's say they say you're only allowed to use Copilot, we're banning everything else. There's actually an 83% jump in the use of shadow AI in your organization. Employees are going to pick up their phone and do it on their cell phones. So instead of being able to control this centrally from a point of IT like we used to, we actually have to control it from the prompter. And that's why you must educate your people, and they must know clarity is kindness.
Yeah. Do you think we'll see these big AI companies? I know that we've seen like a few times like ChatGPT where it will kind of stop you in the prompts and say, hey, listen, this is not something that you can actually put within the system. Do you think we'll see more of that as these AI agencies or AI kind of providers and models will start to clamp down and assist?
So we've seen more regulations coming around certain things. Chat these days, if you ask it to do something legal, then it tells you, I'm not a lawyer, and I've got to tell it, yes, I know I am though, so just do it and I'll check your work.
Yeah.
Medical information, the same. So I think, yes, certain regulations should definitely exist. We've got kids utilizing AI, and to quite a scary extent, they're using AI as their whole psychologist. And you've got to be a little bit cautious about what they're putting in there. One of my friend's little ones the other day was pretending to be a YouTuber, and what she didn't know, he'd actually gone live on Facebook, and he was doing a marble race, and he politely told them exactly, I'm at X so-and-so street number house.
Hectic.
So there has to be some sort of regulations, especially with children involved,
sure.
I think, but I just hope we don't over-regulate. I think AI is a massive chance for Africa to rise.
Yeah. Definitely.
AI is going to be what allows the small SME to compete with the corporate at scale that we've never seen before. I think big companies finally are no longer comfortable. We're all looking over our shoulder waiting for the guy in the garage to come and eat our lunch. So I definitely think some regulation must come around it, but not over-regulation. But then we do have the South African government who put out a new AI draft policy, and it was written by AI, which they didn't check, and it had hallucinations in half of its sources.
Yeah, so
now no one is going to trust this, and I think that's the risk with AI. Do things properly. We do also have the African Union is putting together draft regulations on AI so that Africa can operate at one level together. So we will have more regulations come, but at this point, we don't necessarily need them. We have the data protection laws. I would like to say if we are ethical and have common sense, we'll be fine. But I think I buy my common sense from different places than most people.
Yeah.
So my rule of thumb is, would you like that done with your personal information?
Yeah, it's a great one. It is a great one. Okay, cool. So going into closing off the session, I've got a few rapid fire questions for you. You've got 10 seconds to answer them.
Okay.
And if you get them right, well, I don't know if you're going to get them right or not, I'm not the expert in the field, but if you can answer them within 10 seconds, you'll get a golden star. Okay.
I have a golden star.
Are you ready?
Let's go.
First one, cheapest lesson you've ever learned.
Train your people. Your people are your biggest asset. They're either going to be your biggest asset or your biggest downfall. It costs nothing to spend time with them and really upskill everyone. I think a beautiful way of looking at it is you can ask yourself, well, what happens if I upskill these people and they leave? Well, what happens if you don't and they stay?
Yeah. Great. Gold star. What is the most expensive advice you've ever ignored?
There's this Eastern philosophy around business. It's called slow, slow, quick. We don't always have to move like a bull in a china shop. I think we can take the correct steps to get where we're going, take a step back, take a look at it, let someone else look at it, because once it's out there, to roll it back is almost completely impossible. The internet is forever, and almost that failure will be there forever.
Yeah. Gold star number 2.
Number 2.
One book, person, or tool that saved you school fees.
Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0, the latest one by Mark Lazier and them. I think the first 58 pages really of that is an incredible guide to any entrepreneur who's really starting up a business. And it speaks a lot about how to deal with people and those relationships. And I think in the moving age of AI and digitization, empathy and EQ are going to be your two biggest strengths that us as humans can bring to the table.
Sure.
And that's, I think, really, really helpful.
Awesome. I'll definitely check it out. That would be
3
Gold star
stars.
number 3. Yeah, well done. What fees or fee are businesses paying right now or accumulating without knowing it?
So either we're going to use our data properly or we're not. And I think the fee would really be a missed opportunity. So I think AI has this incredible opportunity for Africa as well as SMMEs to really rise and compete with corporates. But if your data isn't organized and you lose trust or reputation, I think you're out of the game.
Yeah. I believe that's gold star number 4.
It's called?
I believe that would be gold star number 4.
Oh, gold star, yes, lovely.
Yeah. So some bonus rounds. Who does POPI not apply to?
Deceased people, as well as liquidated entities.
Nice. What rights do customers have?
So really you have a right to know where your information is, who's got it, what they're using it for, how long they're going to keep it for. You also have the right to withdraw your consent, and you have the right to be forgotten. So to tell an organization, please delete everything you have about me.
Awesome. Number 5? Nice. Number 6. That's gold star number 6. How do you complain?
Very easy. The Information Regulator's website has a complaint form on, and you easily go and fill out what your complaint is, and the Information Regulator will actually investigate that, either negotiate a settlement. But for me, the bigger lesson is, if it's that easy for me to complain about someone using my data inappropriately, it's a double-edged sword, because as a business owner, it's that easy for someone to lay a complaint against me for doing that with their personal information.
Sure. Thank you so much. I think you did really well. I think you got gold stars all across the board.
Thank you.
If you could hand one compliance lesson to every business owner in South Africa for free, the one you've watched cost the most, what is it?
Don't be ignorant. If you're going to hire compliance experts or lawyers to implement things, don't fight them every step of the way. I've had clients come on board, and it's extremely difficult to get that organization compliant, because the culture starts from the head. So if that individual is not going to be on board with compliance, you're going to beat your head against a wall every step of the way. And I don't understand why you would pay experts to do what they do and then tell them no.
Yeah.
So I think we're not going to know everything. Of course, you can do POPI by yourself, but to have an expert who's going to do it for you, allow that process. Don't then try to stop it, because it's frustrating. Use it as the differentiator.
Sure. I think if today's session felt uncomfortable in any way, Sam and her team at LabourNet do this for a living, and they're one quick call away. So definitely get in touch if you would like some assistance. That's school's out for today. Don't pay lessons that other people have paid. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please do follow, and we're going to try release one of these every single month with a new guest. Thank you, Sam, for joining us in today's session, our very first session. Yeah.
Thank you. It's been awesome.
Cool stuff.